Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I've gotten quite a few requests on both of my pages to do a video dedicated to scary movies or horror movies. And while I've talked about it a lot because I'm a big movie buff, I've done podcast episodes about it, tag videos, just chit chat with Cass or coffee with Cass episodes. I have a long list of favorite movies, but just to dedicate a full video to the horror genre, I haven't really done that yet. I will say a couple years ago I did movies to watch during Halloween, and I will link that in the description below. A lot of that is kid friendly, so if you have little ones I would definitely check out that because a lot of them are like kid movies, but I always watch them every Halloween season. This video is definitely horror movies for adults because most of these movies are rated R, some PG-13, but most of them are rated R. So I just went ahead and jotted down a list of movies that came to my mind right off the bat. Chances are I will forget some favorites because I have so many favorite movies, and the list would go on and on. This video would go on and on. So I just jotted down the ones that came to my mind that I like to rewatch or I like something special about them, and here we are. We are joined today by my skeletons, my ghost faces, all via the spooky vibes. So I figured for this I would give a little bit of details of each movie and kind of why I like them. So if you haven't seen them, I will avoid spoilers. You can kind of take this as a recommendation video, if you will, or if you're a horror movie buff and you've seen a lot of these, you can just leave your favorites in the comments below. So let's start off with The Conjuring. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren work to help a family terrorized by a dark presence in their farmhouse. This came out in 2013. It is rated R. It's rated as horror, mystery, thriller, and it is directed by James Wan. So yeah, this came out in 2013, so about 7 years ago or so, and I immediately loved it. Reasons why I love it: there are actually parts in this film that made me jump, freaked me out, and I really enjoy James Wan's directing style. It actually gave me the creeps, and scary movies, horror movies, it takes a lot to do that for me. I'm also very fascinated by the Ed and Lorraine Warren cases, so this was a great movie introduction. And of course, this is the film that started the whole Conjuring universe, if you will. There's been sequels and Annabelle movies and the Nun movie and all of this that are surrounding the Warrens cases. But this is the first one that started it off, and I believe it's the best one. Then we have my favorite slasher, and that is Scream. A year after the murder of her mother, a teenage girl is terrorized by a new killer who targets the girl and her friends by using horror films as part of a deadly game. This came out in 1996. It is rated R, horror and mystery, and is directed by Wes Craven. Okay, can't really go wrong with Wes Craven. I love Scream. I love Scream, right? Here we go. I love me some Ghostface. I love the whole series, all of it. First one is probably my favorite, but I love the whole series. They're making another one. I'm so excited. My favorite thing about this movie and this series is that it references other horror movies. So if you're a scary movie fan like me, you get the references. You know the horror movie rules of what you should and should not do when you're in a horror movie situation. Plus the slasher scary aspect to it and the comedy bits and everything. I love Scream. Then we go to a classic horror and or Halloween pick. That's Halloween, the original Halloween movie. 15 years after murdering his sister on Halloween night in 1963, Michael Myers escapes from a mental hospital and returns to the small town of Haddonfield, Illinois to kill again. This came out in 1978. It is rated R. It is a horror and thriller movie, and it is directed by John Carpenter. Another great name for scary movies. So Halloween is a favorite of mine for a lot of different reasons. You know, you get Scream Queen Jamie Lee Curtis. Michael Myers is probably one of my favorite like slashers, up there with Ghostface, you know? And there's a lot of creepiness with how Michael Myers is shot. At the beginning of this film, you kind of have like distant ways where he's in the shot and it makes it super creepy, but not like jump scare in your face sort of situation. Now there's been a lot of different Halloween movies made, sequels, spin-offs, all of that jazz, but nothing truly beats the original Halloween film and how creepy Michael Myers is. Then we have The Ring. A journalist must investigate a mysterious videotape which seems to cause the death of anyone 1 week to the day after they view it. This came out in 2002. It is rated PG-13. It is a horror mystery, and it is directed by Gore Verbinski. So The Ring has been a favorite of mine since it came out. It's kind of located in the Pacific Northwest, so I thought that that was super cool when I first saw it, and the whole idea of this, like the backstory of it. I am a backstory buff for scary and horror movies. I love a good backstory, and The Ring has a good one. It does. And there's been other movies to it, sequels and whatnot, and spin-offs to The Ring, but I think the first one is the best, although I don't mind the sequels. But yes, this was a favorite of mine when it came out, and I have seen it over and over and over again. Even it still gives me the creeps. It's still a perfect movie for around Halloween time, and even though a lot of you youngsters have probably never had to rewind a videotape, it's still a great suggestion. Next up I have House of Wax. That's the remake. A group of unwitting teens are stranded near a strange wax museum and soon must fight to survive and keep from becoming the next exhibit. This came out in 2005. It is a horror thriller. It's rated R, and it's directed by Jaume Collet Serra. So I haven't seen the original House of Wax. I saw this movie because Chad Michael Murray was in it, and I happen to be a huge One Tree Hill fan. But I love really into this movie. I've seen it over and over and over again. My friends and I used to watch it so much, and there are some cringe horror scenes in this that still make me visibly cringe because they're so uncomfortable to watch, but it's a great horror movie. I really enjoy it. I like the storyline of it. The cast is good. It's just one that I can for sure, one of those teen horror movies I can just watch over and over again. Dawn of the Dead. A nurse, a policeman, and young married couple, a salesman, and other survivors of a worldwide plague that is producing aggressively flesh-eating zombies take refuge in a mega Midwestern shopping mall. This is the 2004 version. It is action and horror, and it's directed by Zack Snyder. So this one is much more fast-tempoed than the original Dawn of the Dead, which is a great classic movie in itself, but the remake is intense. It's probably the first zombie movie that I really got into long before the days of Walking Dead where everything was about zombies. This movie is gory and scary and freaky, especially as we're living in a worldwide plague. Thankfully, we haven't got to the zombie episode of our epic year that is 2020 yet. But if you guys like zombies, I really like Dawn of the Dead. Then we have Candyman. The Candyman, a murderous soul with a hook for a hand, is accidentally summoned to reality by a skeptic grad student researching the monster's myth. This came out in 1992. It is horror thriller rated R and was directed by Bernard Rose. Now, I've only seen the first Candyman a handful of times. The reason that is on this list is because how terrified I was after I watched this movie the first time. And even thereafter, it's just a creepy movie, and I've only seen the sequels a couple times. I've seen the first one the most, and it's creepy. Tony Todd's voice gives me the chills, but I love him so much as Candyman. I'm very curious to see this new remake that they're going to be doing for Candyman. I'll give it a try. But the original is hella creepy. And I'll give you a little bit of backstory. My best friend and I watched this when we were like preteens, and then we had to go to this park where there was like this really sketchy bathroom at this park, and we were convinced that we were gonna walk into this bathroom stall and like there was gonna be like Candyman or bees or something. It was, yeah, that's probably why it's on this list, because it truly freaked me out so bad after I first saw it. Then we have Insidious. A family looks to prevent evil spirits from trapping their comatose child in a realm called the Further. This came out in 2010, PG-13, horror, mystery, and thriller, and this is also directed by James Wan. I'm a huge fan of James Wan directing style, so of course I got on board with this one and the Conjuring movies and all of that jazz. This movie is super creepy, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge loud scare jump for it to be creepy. It's probably his directing style that I appreciate so much, but I can think of a handful of scenes in this movie that still just give me the creeps, and I've seen it over and over again, but I love it so much, and I think the concept is very interesting as well. Great cast, and even some of the sequels that they've done, I've enjoyed those as well. So, Insidious. A more classic one for you would be Psycho. A Phoenix secretary embezzles $40,000 from her employer's client, goes on the run, and checks into a remote motel run by a young man under the domination of his mother. This came out in 1960. Horror mystery thriller, is rated R, and of course it is directed by Alfred Hitchcock. So if you haven't seen Psycho, chances are you probably know something about it. It is pretty iconic. I still really enjoy this movie, even though I knew so much about it when I first saw it. Just, you know, classic black and white Alfred Hitchcock movie that has some of those creepy elements, and this is a movie that you can only watch a certain way one time, and then, you know, spoilers, things happen and you cannot watch it the same again, and some of the concepts within this film I think make for a really creepy and good scary movie. We have Hush. A deaf and mute writer who retreated into the woods to live a solitary life must fight for her life in a silence when a masked killer appears at her window. This came out in 2016. It's horror thriller, rated R, and it's directed by Mike Flanagan. This movie was very interesting to me because I hadn't really seen something like it before, where the main female character, is deaf, and so it takes a whole other meaning when you're trying to run from like this psycho killer and you can't hear him. It's very interesting. I like how it's shot. I'm learning that I'm a big fan of Mike Flanagan, and I should check out more of his things because I think there's some other movies of his on this list. But it just adds a different element to something that I hadn't seen before, and I've watched it several times, and it's still very entertaining and creepy to me. Would You Rather? Desperate to help her ill brother, a young woman unknowingly agrees to compete in a deadly game of Would You Rather, hosted by a sadistic aristocrat. This came out in 2012. Horror thriller. It is not rated, and it's directed by David Guy Levy. This movie is so underrated. I happened to stumble upon this, I think on Netflix a few years ago, and I love this movie. It's so messed up. It's such a scary concept, and every time I bring this up to anyone that likes or enjoys horror movies, they've never heard of it. And I mean, I hadn't heard of it until I accidentally clicked on it one day. So I highly recommend this movie if you like the creepy, scary vibes of a game of Would You Rather. It's a really good one, and it's like very intense and lots of thrillers. Okay. The Blair Witch Project. I know. 3 film students vanish after traveling into Maryland forest to film a documentary on the local Blair Witch legend, leaving only their footage behind. This came out in 1999. Horror mystery. It's rated R. It's directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez. So, The Blair Witch Project. I've seen quite a few times, but it's on my list because of what it was when it came out, and it was really freaky to me when it came out, okay? And the first time I watched it, I was like home alone by myself. It was all dark, and it was creepy. So you've probably heard a lot of things about this film as well, even if you haven't seen it, but it's a creepy message. The way that it is shot, the way that it was released gives that eerie feel to it of the mystery of the Blair Witch, and I still will watch this movie over and over again because it's just creepy. It is for sure creepy, and you put yourself into those people's shoes, and it's entertaining creepiness. Geralds Game. A couple tries to spice up their marriage in a remote lake house. After the husband dies unexpectedly, the wife is left handcuffed to their bed frame and must fight to survive and break free. This came out in 2017. Drama horror thriller, rated TVMA, and directed by Mike Flanagan. See, I said he had some other ones. So I first wanted to see this because Carla Gugino is in it, and I have a huge girl crush on Carla Gugino. She's amazing. And it is an intense thriller. A lot of it is the mind games of what would happen if you were trapped in that type of situation. And it involves like flashbacks and these different like aspects of what is happening in this woman's mind while she is trapped in this room, basically. It is based off of a Stephen King book, so if you're a fan of Stephen King's work, you'd probably like this. I also like Mike Flanagan's directing, so this is a movie that I have also watched several times, even though it's only a couple years old. It's on my favorites list. Orphan. A husband and wife who recently lost their baby adopt a 9-year-old girl who is not nearly as innocent as she claims to be. Came out in 2009. It is a horror mystery thriller, rated R, and is directed by Jaume Collet-Serra, the same person that directed House of Wax. The Orphan. Also seen this several times. This is a film that you can only watch a certain way one time, and every other time you see it differently. But that doesn't take away the creepy or scary factor to this film. The cast is amazing in this, and the way that things are done within the storyline makes it a fantastic horror movie and a great scary movie, especially if you haven't seen it. Like, it's a good one. My skeleton necklace is not cooperating. Alright, next up I have a very classic horror movie, and that is The Bride of Frankenstein. Mary Shelley reveals the main characters of her novel survived. Dr. Frankenstein, goaded by an even madder scientist, builds his monster a mate. Came out in 1935. Drama, horror, sci-fi. It's not rated, and it's directed by James Whale. So Bride of Frankenstein is on this list because it's those classic horror movies, you know, the universal monsters, if you will. I'm a huge fan of Bride and Frankenstein. I cannot say enough that I am obsessed with the lighting in this film. The way that the black and white film is shot and lit in these movies is absolutely gorgeous to me. So I'm just like in love with that aspect of Bride of Frankenstein. Of course, it's like a classic scary movie, if you will. Might not seem scary to us these days compared to what we watch nowadays, but if you're looking for a classic monster movie that is filmed beautifully in black and white, Bride of Frankenstein could be the one for you. Then we have Sleepy Hollow. Ichabod Crane is sent to Sleepy Hollow to investigate the decapitations of 3 people, with the culprit being the legendary apparition of the Headless Horseman. Came out in 1999, fantasy horror mystery, rated R, and is directed by Tim Burton. So I'm a Tim Burton fan, and Sleepy Hollow is probably one of my favorite Tim Burton movies. I really don't consider this movie to be a horror movie, but I put it on this list because I guess a lot of people do. I guess this is a scary movie to some people, but Sleepy Hollow is one of my favorite movies. It's such an aesthetic for me. I love so much of how Sleepy Hollow is framed in this movie and the outfits and just so much of it, which is kind of like Tim Burton's taste with the book storyline mixed together. Like, things are a bit different from the book, but I'm a huge fan of Sleepy Hollow. I guess there's like goriness to it and scary bits that might scare some people, but it takes a lot to freak me out. I've seen Sleepy Hollow, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen this movie. Then we have Jaws. When a killer shark unleashes chaos on a beach community, it's up to the local sheriff, a marine biologist, and an old seafarer to hunt the beast down. Came out in 1975. Adventure, thriller, horror, rated PG-13, and is directed by Steven Spielberg. I actually just recently did a podcast on the first Jaws, and I'm going to be doing episodes on the whole series. I love Jaws. Once again, I don't really see it as a horror movie, but it's on this list because so many people are freaked out by this movie. So many people consider it to be a horror movie. I see it more as like a thriller, but you know what? Let's just throw it in. It is a man-eating shark, so I guess we'll add it in. It's a little freaky, okay? And I am scared of certain parts of water, so I love this movie. If you want to know more about my opinions on it, go listen to the podcast, but there's so much about this movie. Steven Spielberg does a fantastic job. It's a wonderful cast. Just lots of good stuff, and if you're freaked out by things with water or sharks, this would definitely be the perfect scary movie for you. Then this next one I almost forgot about until a lovely ASMR artist, ASMR Shani, reminded me about it, and that is Stay Alive, okay? For a group of teens, the answer to the mysterious death of their old friend lies within the world of an online video game, based on the true story of an ancient noblewoman known as the Blood Countess. It came out in 2006, fantasy horror mystery, rated PG-13, and is directed by William Brent Bell. So, I watched this movie because Sophia Bush was in it when it came out, and once again, One Tree Hill fan. And Sophia Bush's character, October, became a total dream goal for myself. Like, I wanted to be her when I grew up, and then, like, looking at myself now, isn't really that far off. Probably not. I'll take it. I want to be October so bad. So this movie is inspired by the Blood Countess story, which I just researched for a Bizarre and Unusual World episode, Elizabeth Bathory. Now that I know more about that history, I want to go rewatch it again, but I have seen it several times. I love the interesting concept with video games and like a curse coming to life. I find that super interesting. Some people may find this movie to be corny or things like that, but I find it very entertaining and I love the concept behind Stay Alive. Then we have kind of a two-parter here, okay? So, The Shining. A family heads to an isolated hotel for a winter where a sinister presence influences the father into violence, while his psychic son sees horrific foreboding for both past and future. This came out in 1980. It is drama horror, rated R, and is directed by Stanley Kubrick. So the first part of this is the Stanley Kubrick version, okay? I can appreciate it for what it is. Is it what Stephen King wanted? Absolutely not. They clearly butted heads massively on this film, and Stanley Kubrick did his own thing, but I can appreciate what he brought to it. Like, he kind of did his own thing, and it's kind of like iconic, some of the stuff, you know, like red rum and come play with us. There's a lot to it, and you know, Jack Nicholson plays a great crazy person. So I can appreciate that aspect to it. So the second part of this is the Shining miniseries, which had Stephen King on board and is much more like the book, The Shining. So if you want something that's a little bit more creatively free, check out the Stanley Kubrick one. If you want something that is right around Stephen King's novel, then you should check out the miniseries. The miniseries came out in 1997, is not rated, was directed by Mick Jarvis, who I can appreciate because he wrote Hocus Pocus. So the next couple movies on here, I don't think that they are necessarily favorite movies of mine. I have seen them a couple times. The reason I put them on this list is if you are using this video as a recommendation list, you need some horror movies in your life, maybe check out these because these movies screwed me up. They fucked with my mind when I saw them. They were so creepy to me. The first one is Penny Dreadful. Young Penny goes on a retreat with her psychologist. The intention is to help her overcome her phobia and intense fear of cars. Unexpected events find her in a nightmare situation where her worst fears come true. This came out in 2006. Horror, mystery, thriller, rated R, and is directed by Richard Brandes. So, like I said, this movie screwed me up. It was really creepy. There's a lot of unexpected parts to this, in my opinion, and it just gave me the heebie-jeebies. Oh my gosh. I think I've only seen it twice, actually. The first time I watched it was just like, need something to watch, and it was really freaky to me. And then I was like, okay, I have to watch it again. Let's see. And it's still very creepy. Haven't watched it in years, but perhaps if you're looking for an ideal horror movie for you, you could maybe check out that one. Then we have The Open House. A teenager and his mother find themselves being threatened by forces when they move into a new house. It came out in 2018. Horror thriller, rated TV-MA, is directed by Matt Angel and Suzanne Cote. So this is on Netflix one that my mom and I just decided to watch one night, and it is creepy for a lot of different reasons, and it's not the type of horror movie that is so jump in your face, I have to do a huge jump scare to be creepy. It's like the what's not seen aspect of creepiness, or what the viewer sees but the character doesn't see. It gives me like bad shivers. It gives me bad shivers. I've watched it twice. I watched it that first time with my mom, and then I showed somebody else it to see it again, and it's still very creepy. I don't know if I'll ever watch it again, maybe. I don't know, but it is for sure on a list of scary movies. Then we have The Others. A woman who lives in her darkened old family house with her two photosensitive children become convinced that her home is haunted. This came out in 2001, PG-13. Horror mystery thriller, directed by Alejandro Amenabar. This movie, if you haven't seen this movie, this is another one where you can only watch it a certain way once. and the storyline is very interesting. Nicole Kidman's really good in it. It definitely has the creepy, like Victorian vibe to it, like with like a Victorian ghost story, you could kind of say. It gives that vibe to me. I have not seen this movie in years. I think maybe I've seen it twice. I should watch it again, but it's for sure a great ghost, like creepy, scary movie if you're into that sort of thing and you're looking for something to watch. And then we have The Strangers. A young couple staying in an isolated vacation home are terrorized by 3 unknown assassins. Came out in 2008. It's a horror thriller, rated R, directed by Brian Bertino. So this one, I think I've only seen this movie once. Once again, it's not really a favorite, but it creeped me out so bad. Once again, with the shots and how the viewer can see someone behind the character, but the character can't see it. Super creepy. It's very scary stuff. If you're into like isolated out in the middle of nowhere type movies and crazy serial killer stuff starts happening, you might want to check out this one. And then to conclude this video, I have 2 honorable mentions that are absolutely favorites of mine, but they're not movies. They're like miniseries, TV shows, if you will. So I had to include them on this because they fit the description of horror, scary movies, perfect for those spooky vibes and that jazz. So the first one is Rose Red, which is inspired by a Stephen King book. I have rewatched that miniseries so many times, and I'll probably watch it again this year. I love the Rose Red miniseries. I can watch it over and over again. I find it fascinating. It's really good. Has like the creepy house, mysterious house vibe with ghosts and strange occurrences happening. It's a good one. I also really, really love The Haunting of Hill House. I have rewatched that series several times, and it's only a couple years old, and I'm rewatching it again right now in spooky season because I love that show so much. Once again, Carla Gugino and Mike Flanagan. So I have a girl crush on Carla Gugino, and I like Mike Flanagan's directing apparently, but I love Haunting of Hill House. I can't wait for Bly Manor to come out. It should be coming out, I think, in a couple days by the time I post this video. But I'm a huge fan of that storyline, the ghosties, and even though it's not exactly like the original book that they took inspiration from, I still really appreciate it, and I think it's really well done. So those were some of my go-to favorite horror movies. I would love to hear what you guys think in the comment section below. What is your all-time favorite horror movie, scary movie that you have to watch all the time or that you've seen a million times? I love to hear guys' thoughts and opinions, and I'll take suggestions too. I'm always up for watching new movies too. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, lovelies. What's your favorite scary movie?